Hello and welcome to Newsbreak Chats. I'm Chay Hofileña, editor of Newsbreak, the investigative and in-depth section of Rappler. We recently published a two-part series about how Department of Education laptops intended for public school teachers during the lockdown found their way to marketplaces. We also discovered that a little-known logistics provider won the bid to distribute the laptops nationwide. The situation became complicated when DepEd failed to pay the winning bidder. With us today to untangle what happened are researcher Ailla de Cruz and multimedia reporters Ryan Macasero, now covering DepEd, and Bonz Magsambol, who used to cover DepEd and is now covering the Senate. Magandang araw sa inyong tatlo and welcome to Newsbreak Chats. Simulan natin sa iyo, Ryan. How did this whole story begin? Parang yung initial sniff came from you, di ba?
Oo. Actually, it started in Cebu. It was discovered by another media outlet, which I was actually angry at myself for not being the one to discover it.
Naiskupan ka?
Yes. And it was in a store that was near where I was living at the time. So, of course, as reporters, when that happens, you will get angry at yourself. So, I was reading what it was about, how the person who found it in the store brought it to another local media outlet. So why not me? But so it was, they found the markings and the software on the laptops. And so I put another follow-up story together, basically what we know about the laptops so far. And I said that if I would get another document or something to follow up on this, I'm going to follow up on it because, of course, gigil ka na eh.
Yeah.
So, it just so happened that I was on my way to Manila for another event and someone saw the follow-up story that we did, and then the sources just started to come to us. So, the story brought us over here, and then we found more information that they're actually being sold here in Metro Manila, in Luzon as well. And so it brought me back to Manila.
So from Cebu, the story traveled with you to Manila.
Yes.
And then you found the other sources and documents here. So parang para sa inyo talaga yung story, even as it started in Cebu. Pero siguro, basic question always, di ba? Parang whenever you stumble upon a story, parang meron ka ng hypothesis. Meron ka ng suspicion. Something is wrong here and posible na this is what happened. Ano yung palagay niyong naging problema? Either Ryan or Bonz. Sige, Bonz.
Siguro yung important context dito is when these laptops were discovered na binebenta nga siya sa Cebu, ongoing din yung Senate hearing about overpriced DepEd laptops din. So, these laptops naman, ito yung mga overpriced, outdated, important context. So, siguro for context din sa mga nanonood sa atin, itong mga laptops na to, binebenta siya ng around 57,000 that time. Nabili siya ng DepEd that time at 57,000 daw. Pero yung market price niya is around 30,000 lang or less pa. So, kaya nagkaroon ng Senate hearing. So, yung initial suspicion namin dito kung bakit may binibenta is baka ito yung mga laptops na dahil nga mabagal, hindi naman quality yung, substandard yung quality. That's why binibenta siya ng mga teachers themselves. And it turned out different pa pala ito. So, this is another project pa ng DepEd when it comes nga dito sa computerization program nila.
Kasi, di ba, baka na-confuse din yung iba, di ba?
Yeah, exactly.
Sabihin na, ito ba yung overpriced laptops? Pero iba to, di ba? So, yung itong second story na to that you worked on, ikaw naman, Ryan, what was your suspicion?
Actually, I was really confused because when they were being sold in HMR and on Facebook Marketplace, they were being sold for 9,999. I took a look at the contracts and the original price was around 27,000 for the unit, but it came in a package of lapel and smart TV for 53,000. So, yung naisip ko, why would you sell it for lower? Now, was it a syndicate or it would have to be someone who was not paying, had to pay anything for this to be na ibebenta nila ng patalo. And at that time, we weren't exactly sure how the deliveries worked. Because before, diba, the suppliers would initially deliver the products to the schools themselves. So did it get lost from the supplier side, or is it from the DepEd side, and then we found out about the third party, that they had a third party.
You weren't
logistics.
covering DepEd at that time.
At the time, no.
So, para kang init siya sa isang territory that you were not very familiar with,
Yeah.
diba? How did you cope with that? And how did you work with Bonz on this?
I think I was just running off of my curiosity and
Okay.
very captivated by the story. And Bonz is the one who had a lot of sources within the department, in the bureaucracy. So that was very important to bridge our information together. We would communicate and coordinate now, who are the personalities that are involved in procurement, who do we need to talk to, and I would be looking into like the contracts and on the on the outside the business community and all of those other things. So yeah.
So, Bonz nag-compliment kayo.
Yes, actually, ako yung kumausap ng ulit doon naman sa loob. So while Ryan was working with finding out sino tong provider na to, sifting through the contracts, ako naman yung kumakausap sa loob. So yeah, as early as October,
October 2022.
2022. So na nagkaroon ng tip nga na these laptops were being sold in the market. So nakakuha yung Rappler ng letter. So it was a demand letter from the Department of Education. From Transpac. So that's
Which is the
logistics
logistics provider.
provider.
Yeah.
Pinadala to sa DepEd. So parang yun yung naging una nating document Na parang, yun yung parang naging lead natin kung sino ba yung nasan to. Sino yung provider na to. So that's why parang hinalungkat natin yung SEC records, yung mga contracts, kung ano pa yung mga nakuha nila prior to that. And then when we showed it to the Department of Education, of course, to verify if it was indeed a letter. Nung una natin siyang pinakita, yung initial reaction was, ano to? What was this about? So parang ako, bakit hindi nyo alam, kayo to?
Address
To sa inyo.
Yes.
Right? I mean, okay, yung letter kasi was addressed to Undersecretary Cruz. So, when I approached him, sabi niya, I wasn't aware. Parang hindi daw siya, wala akong alam dito. So, okay. So, nag-move on na tayo to another DepEd official to confirm if wala nga silang nare-receive na ganito. And it turned out, yung lang USEC na yun, yung hindi alam.
Okay. Sige. We will go into
Okay.
the other details of your discoveries later on. Pero bukod sa inyong dalawa, you also needed help sa research, which is usually a typical important component of any investigation. In fact, common naman yan. Everything begins with research in any story, di ba? And that is where you pulled in Ailla. Ailla, ano naman yung naging role mo dito sa storyang ito?
So, yung trabaho ko po dito sa investigative, umikot lang siya sa pag-contact ng mga schools to ask them if they receive the laptops that they were supposed to receive. Kasi po, we acquired a copy of the list of school beneficiaries.
Ilan yun? Ilan yung nasa
Ang
list
dami.
mo?
Ang dami pong page, parang 500 pages siya.
500?
Pero all around the Philippines siya. Tapos yung contract na involve yung specific DepEd laptop na tinitingnan natin, dalawa yon only involves 11,500 schools.
Only
11,500 schools out of
Sige.
all the DCP Patch 2020 package recipient.
Ano yung DCP, by the way?
DCP is the DepEd Computerization Program. Sa DepEd siya, so they provide equipment or gadgets for computerization purposes. So, ayun po. So, ayun, I contacted, una, I gathered the list of schools kasi naka-PDF siya eh. So, I had to, convert it to another file. So, my laptop keeps on crashing as I do that. Kasi 500 pages siya. So,
Oo
nagka-crash siya nung nagka-crash. But I had to do it para po ma-extract talaga yung specific schools na kailangan natin. So, ayun nga, nakuha ko yung almost 11,500
So
schools.
down to mga ilang pages yon from 500 pages?
Hindi ko na po kinount kasi nasa ano na siya, sa Excel ko na siya nilagay. Tapos sineparate ko per regions involved.
Oh.
Tapos after that, kinailangan ko pang kunin yung contact information nila. Kasi wala tayong mahanap na database to.
Ng public schools,
Yes,
no?
na they have the contact numbers.
Yes.
So, from 11,500, ay ako naman pahirapan yung sarili ko. Ay, ano.
Parang ilang taon yun ang pagtatawag,
oo,
di ba?
parang siguro kung tinapos ko po 11,500, baka 2025, ginagawa pa rin natin itong investigation na to, tapos hindi na siya relevant. So, ayun po, I randomly selected, I just chose parang at least 10% of the population. So, 1,500. I randomly selected 1,500 schools. Pero sa dami pa rin po nun, I wasn't able to call all the 1,500 schools. I was only able to make 600 plus calls.
How long did it take you to make those 600 calls?
Hanggang February po, tumatawag ako.
Ilang
From
buwan?
November
From
to
Nove-
February.
December, January, February.
Yes.
Nag-Christmas ka ba?
Yes, na Christmas. Kasi ma'am, pag naman tumawag ako ng Christmas, parang kabastusan naman sa mga teachers.
Walang
Yes,
sasakot,
opo. So, ayun, hanggang February tumatawag po ako ng mga schools.
So all in all, how many phone calls?
Parang I was able to make 600 plus calls.
600.
Yes. Tapos, even though hindi naman natapos yung 1,500 schools, we na-find out naman, nakita, na some schools really did not receive their laptops or the
Nag-sampling ka ba, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, or regional,
Yes
certain
po.
groups lang?
Ano po, bali, kasi it involves 7 regions. So, ang kinuha ko, 10% of each of each provinces from 7 regions. Ayun po, para distributed yung...
Okay. Sige, what were your major findings? Sabi mo kanina, you were looking at documents, you were calling, you were interviewing people. What stood out? What were your major discoveries?
I think when Bonz was able to get the document on the unpaid 34.5 million, and that was the reason that the subcontractors were allegedly selling the laptops, it wasn't sufficient explanation to me as to why they would have to resort to that. That the procurement process is supposed to protect the public from that kind of event where a contractor would, a deal with a contractor would just collapse. And that, I think what people have to understand, that this wasn't the entire contract, that there were a series, so it's called a call-off contract. And
Call of contract.
Call-off contract, which is done under a framework agreement, which is the overall agreement with DepEd and the contractor, worth 667 million. But within that 667 million, there are 10 contracts that are divided for different deals, which are logistics, warehousing, tagging, and other things. So this 34.5 million was specifically for the warehousing. So if only this particular contract was unpaid, why couldn't you operate that? It's a much bigger deal than that. And so when we ordered the financial statements of Transpac, it became obvious why the logistics provider was not able to operate. They only had 7.1 million in cash. So where did they get the financing? Is the big question in order to finance a project that big. One can argue that in call of contracts, you actually don't have to maximize the 667 million. You can, if logistics provider is only able to serve, let's say, deal with 30 million, they can do that. But they decided to maximize the entire 667 million immediately. So all of these 10 contracts were signed between October and December. So they maximized the entire amount. So they would have to deliver on all of that. And it was I had to look into, okay, what are the basic requirements for a contractor to be able to get a deal like that? The procurement law only, it provides a minimum. So there's a formula that they have to meet a certain amount of capital, and it looks like pasok sila.
Okay.
And then the second one is that they have had to have 2 previous government projects worth 50% and 25%, in this case, of the 667 million. We're unsure because we've been asking the DepEd for those
They
documents.
refused to
and they
provide the documents.
refused to provide those documents. But when we look into their financials, it looks like they only had one warehouse aside from Little Cash. And they did not have regional operations like this before. So even if they met the minimum, common sense would tell you that they would not be able to execute an agreement like this unless maybe they had a joint venture, or if they had the correct projection of how much financing they need. And so when I would talk to I would talk to accountants or experts, it was always pasok sila, it's legal, it's above board. But I think if you're guided by common sense, it would show you that it was bound to collapse. And I think that because the Bids and Awards Committee is given, they're given discretion on how to frame the requirements, so they could add additional requirements in order to make sure that this is the correct bidder for this particular project, or they could give them leeway. And it looks like that this particular provider was given a lot of leeway to be able to get this project, and that raised other questions as to why other bidders were disqualified, such as Metro Pac, which is under the Metro Pacific Group, which probably could have handled, this payment was only delayed for 6 months, so it's not like we're talking about a delayed payment that's 2 or 3 years. And so I think that alone is very questionable. Why this?
So parang for you, when you looked at the FS financial statements, doon mo nakita yung red flags.
And the devil is really in the details. You really have to look at it. And these providers are required. These service providers are required to submit their financials to the Bids and Awards Committee. So, did they not see these? Is a big question.
Okay. How about you, Bonz? Ano naman ang major findings mo?
Okay. Siguro as I was saying kanina, na parang unaware yung Department of Current under the leadership of Vice President Sara Duterte with this ito ngang logistics provider natin na Transpac. Actually, nung unang narinig nila yung Transpac, ano yun? Parang yun. So parang ako, as a government official, of course, na in charge dito sa education system natin to fix it, lalo na ngayon na meron tayong learning crisis, and then sila mismo hindi nila alam kung ano pala, apparently, yung mga bagay or yung sistema sa loob. So how could you expect them to fix such a huge problem, a big problem, di ba? And then, so apparently, nung nagtatanong-tanong kami doon, well, mahirap talaga. Like, it took them, siguro I was in touch with them since, I have been in touch with them since October. And then December, ongoing pa rin yung usap namin about dito sa Transpac, paano niya isa-settle to, meron ba talagang ganitong problem yung DepEd with this logistic provider. Tapos, hindi pa rin talaga, like, wala pa rin klarong sagot. Like, sasabihin lang nila, we're looking into it, na tinap na namin yung NBI to investigate itong mga laptops na to. Pero imagine, October pa lang NBI na yung narrative na sinasabi nila, until na wala pa rin naman resulta yung investigation ng NBI. So, ayun. And then, what I found actually is, yung pakikipag-usap-usap natin sa mga officials na yon, and then dun sa mga sources natin na familiar, of course, dito sa sistema na to, sinabi nila na wala palang proper turnover.
From the Duterte administration
to Marcos.
No? To the current
Sara,
one. Okay.
So, walang proper na turnover. Pero kung marirecall ng mga nanonood sa atin, sa news, sa mga balita, headline to before na parang merong mga photo op na may turnover na ginawa, of course, si Vice President Sara Duterte or si former Secretary Leonor Briones kay Sara Duterte. Pero apparently, it was mere photo op. So, yun lang yung nangyari. And then, yung source din natin na yun, sinabi niya na parang usually kasi yung turnover would last like, di ba, like 2 weeks or even could take a month if mas marami talagang ito turn over, lalo na for a big agency like the Department of Education.
Yes, I was just going to say, DepEd yun eh.
Yeah.
Ang daming kontrata, ang daming
Exactly.
empleyado, ang daming public school teachers and students.
Yeah, we're talking about almost 1 million public school teachers and 60,000 na schools sa buong bansa, di ba? Pero apparently, parang sabi sa akin, yung meeting daw na yon parang lasted for nearly an hour lang. And then wala nang follow-through.
That was it?
Yeah, that was it. So, parang from then on, so sa ako na-realize, that's why hindi sila aware dito sa mga ganitong deals na nangyari nung Duterte administration or dun sa administration ni Briones. And then when we told, nung nalaman nila yon, parang sobrang slow. Di ba parang ikaw, na parang lumabas na kayo sa balita na may mga ganitong nangyayari. Parang yung initial reaction is, di ba nag-investigate na agad kayo, na parang ginagawa na natin agad na para to solve this, or na-alarm. Pero wala eh, wala tayong narinig na ganon, or nakita sa balita na ganon. Of course, lagi lang, parang tahimik sila, actually.
Yes.
Parang sobrang quiet sila about this issue. Parang hindi ata nila akalain na this issue will blow up, na magbo-blow up to ng ganito.
Ailla, ikaw naman, ano naman ang major findings mo?
Ayun, so when I did the 600 plus calls, kahit hindi ko po natapos yung initially set na 1,500 schools, nakahanap talaga ako ng mga schools na hindi talaga nila na-receive yung DCP package for them. To think natin, ginawa ko po yung calls ng November to February. Noong mga panahon na yun, may mga schools talaga na hindi natanggap yun. And dun sa contract, dapat diba po, dumating yung mga package ng December 2021 to February 2022.
Yeah, early 2022.
First quarter ng 2022. Pero ayun, hanggang nung February ng 2023, wala pa rin yung mga ano. And ayun, I think it's enough to prove na hindi talaga nakarating yung DCP package. And it's alarming kasi po may gantong news na binibenta siya online.
Siguro yung critical doon, kasi di ba, what was good about the work that you did was, tiningnan mo yung kontrata, kumausap ka sa officials, at kinonfirm sa ground, sa teachers, na ito yung intended recipients eh. Pero hindi talaga nila natanggap. So, mukhang may totoong problema. So, mukhang matagal yung process of putting the story together. Why did you choose to do this story and why didn't you give up? Ryan?
For me, 2 reasons. One is, parang when I was looking into the different contracts, these are only this and plus the DEL that's already over 4 billion, and how many contracts is the DepEd handling right now, worth much more billions of our taxpayer. That people it's our money, and not just the DepEd but so many other departments. There are hundreds of thousands of contracts up for grabs every year, and if they can't manage these 2 particular contracts properly, imagine how many others we're not looking into, and how many others should be investigated. So parang it's just one example, and I think we have to do this to show that to show our government that we're looking at what you're doing, and it's the public's right to know how our money is being handled. And number 2 is more personal. The second reason is, as a journalist, when you get documents or that no one else has, parang it's up to you how you're going to run with it. If you're just gonna let it pass you by, or you're really going to keep going until you get to the bottom of it. So I told myself when I got this information that I'm not going to stop until I get to the bottom of it. So those are the 2 main reasons for me.
So the perseverance talaga, no?
Yes.
That I have to understand, I have to get to the bottom of it. How about you, Bonz? At saka saan ka rin nahirapan?
Okay, sige. Siguro yung main reason kaya ako din pinush tong story na to was, I covered the Department of Education or the education sector when the pandemic happened. So, di ba, pandemic changed the way we do things.
Correct.
And especially, parang yung pinaka-major na tinamaan dito talaga is the education sector because we shifted to online learning. And nakita natin na sobrang nahirapan talaga yung mga teachers. Kasi basically, we're talking about 1 million of public school teachers here na wala silang gaanong alam about technology, wala silang resources. And din nga, may mga news tayo, may mga stories tayo, nakikipag-usap tayo sa mga teachers at sinasabi nila na wala silang laptops. And then, nalaman natin na may ganito pala na may mga laptops pala na nasa mga warehouses lang na hindi nilalabas at yun nga, binebenta pa para pagkakitaan. So siguro yun, yung main reason, that's why I pushed this story then. And siguro saan ako nahirapan, yung pangungulit sa official. I think it's, parang, trait yun ng isang journalist na kailangan, aside from naturally curious ka, yung talaga, yung pangungulit mo, parang kahit naiinis na sila for sure. Pero,
naiinis ka rin, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. Parang ganun. Doon ako nahirapan kasi lagi nilang sabihin, for example, meron kaming scheduled na Zoom interview to discuss these things. Sasabihin nila, bump off na lang natin tomorrow or the other day or sa susunod na araw, postpone. So, hindi na siya natutuloy. So, yun, aside from that, yung hihingan mo sila ng statement for another finding na nakita nyo, then same lang din yung response nila. Nasasabihin nila, parang as in yung narrative nila all throughout our investigation, we're looking into it, the NBI is looking into it, and we'll get back to you once we have their report. So yun, medyo yun yung nakakainis. Nandun yung, kasi parang nadidelay yung process. Pero kasi di ba, we can always say na we reach out to them. Yes. Pero gusto naman natin, bigyan din sila ng fair, ng side, of course, sa story natin para din maayos yung pagkaka-present natin at wala tayong loophole na makita.
And this is the reason why inabot din ang 6 months.
6 months, exactly.
Because we waited and binigyan talaga yung lahat ng pagkakataon for them to explain and to show us ano yung understanding nila, di ba? So,
can I add, not just
sure, go ahead.
Not just the DepEd side, but also on the business side, we went to Transpac.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I went there myself and was not allowed in by security. Tried to get HMR to speak.
Yes.
They were also not responding to us, but we still would try our best. And even the sources that would talk to us, it's a very tricky navigation. Because of course, managing sources is an art on its own.
Yes.
You have to understand their motives, and you have to be transparent with yours. Making sure they understand that while we can cooperate on the one aspect, it doesn't mean that we're here to push your agenda. So I think for me that was where doon ako where I learned a lot about how to manage sources.
Quick question: was there corruption?
If we look at the law on graft and corruption, negligence is a part of it. So I think there was certainly a lot of negligence in this instance because when we were because we also went around to the different HMR stores.
Yes.
And even after the DepEd released a statement on the DepEd laptops, we were able to check out a lot of laptops for sale after the fact. November, December, here in Metro Manila, in surrounding provinces. And I went there myself, was told that there were 20 units available, 100 units available. But even then, we weren't able to get a precise number of how many laptops were lost. But I think to give, I think that's why Ailla's part where she was calling the schools was important so that we have a sense of how many were lost. But I think the mere fact that there were laptops lost, the mere fact that they did nothing after it came out until now, we reached out just very recently and we're told that we're cooperating with the NBI once again, the same thing that they were telling us months ago.
Last year.
Yes. Oh, yes. And I think by now, I think the people deserve answers.
Yeah. Yung tanong nyo if may corruption ba dito, the mere fact that they awarded this a big deal to a tiny or small logistics firm based in Las Piñas and failed to deliver, So, sino yung backer ng Transpac, di ba? Bakit sila nakakuha ng ganitong deal given na, di ba, financial-wise, hindi naman sila capable to handle such a big deal. So, yeah,
So,
that's another story.
Next question, next logical question. Sino accountable?
Okay. Sige. Okay, sige. Yung naiisip ko na accountable dito, of course, is yung previous administration, Department of Education Administration.
Okay.
So, yung in charge dito sa procurement. So, bakit nabigyan itong Transpac ng ganito kalaking deal? Meron bang due diligence to check kung sino tong mga bidders na to bago i-award to? And at the same time, I would say na liable din dito yung current admin. I mean, they are also equally liable because they took over. Sila yung nag-took over nitong implementation nitong deal na to. Pero parang wala lang sa kanila when we were asking them for their side, kung bakit sobrang slow nila to act on this. Parang wala parang
Palagay
walang
mo,
nangyari.
Bonz, kasi is it because Duterte and then Duterte?
Yes.
Factor kaya yun?
Yes. Actually, yung mga sources din natin na sinasabi nila na anything daw na project ni Briones or ng last administration, which is the Duterte admin, ayaw daw i-touch ng current admin. And another thing nga dito is yung isang issue din na pwede natin tingnan is yung DepEd Common. So it's an online platform na nag-invest yung Duterte administration but then diniscontinue din ng Sara administration. So yeah, so yun yung parang nakikita natin, anything na parang ayaw nilang makialam dun sa ginawa nung last. Pero di ba, parang it's a government and we're talking about the public education here.
Yes. Ailla, nung finally nailabas na yung story, ano yung pakiramdam? Ano yung naramdaman mo? And I will ask the three of you siguro. What did it feel like nung nailuwal na yung storya?
Finally, tapos na. Ganun. Kasi ang tagal po, mula parang October sinisilip na yung mga documents. Tapos ako, November to February, tumatawag. Nung February nga, tumigil na ako tumawag kasi parang nakakalungkot kada mas may naririnig ako na schools na hindi pa nila natatanggap yung laptops. Ayun. Tapos, ayun po, finally, tapos na siya after how many months. Pero at the same time, nandun yung fear. Kasi DepEd yun, I mean, ang laki niyang institusyon. Tapos parang binangga natin, issue ng laptop, na-involve sila. Tapos ayun, we might get attacked, yung mga ganong thoughts. Pero at the end of the day, lagi ko lang naiisip na may mga schools talaga na hindi naka-receive ng laptops and kawawa naman sila. So I felt relieved na lumabas na yung storya kasi syempre, nung lumabas na siya, nakuha na natin yung attention ng DepEd, nung concerned office and nung other authorities na pwedeng kumilos para ma-actionan tong issue na to.
Okay, how about you, Ryan?
I was bracing myself for possible blowback from the DepEd. Inisip ko what would their spin be or what would their response be. Because I've seen how some of my colleagues have been attacked for their stories online. So far, wala namang ganun. But overall, I'm happy that the work that we put into this, the results of it turned out to be very solid. And I think that a big part of it was also our madugo yung editing process and the vetting process. And I think it was important also because even up until the last day before it was published, we were going through it again and again and again and again because more than fearing attacks from trolls or whatever, I didn't want anything wrong to come out, to the public, because as long as we are sure about our facts, as long as we are certain about our facts, I think that's what we can hold on to. That's the strength of the story, is that all of our facts are correct, all of the context is correct, and I can stand behind it, and I do now that we can stand behind this story. And the DepEd did not come out with anything refuting any of the anything in the story. So because of that itself for me is
How can you refute documents?
correct.
Diba? Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, siguro after mo publishes, finally tapos na siya because it's a product of our months-long investigation. 6 months to be exact. Pero at the same time, I'm kind of worried. Kasi parang yun nangyari dito. I'm covering the Philippine Senate now and I've been asking senators about their comments or magkakaroon ba tayo ng investigation dito sa laptops na to because it involves public funds. Pero walang nangyayari. Like, it's been a week since I sent my messages to all these senators, especially dito sa mga education committees in charge of dito sa Department of Education. Pero walang nangyayari. Wala silang nilalabas pa rin na statement. So, dahil ba the Department of Education is being led by no less than Vice President Sara Duterte. That's why they're still quiet about it. Pero, di ba, we're still hoping sana na yung pagiging independent ng mga branches ng government natin is ma-maintain sana. Because after all, public service is a public trust, right?
Correct. Very well said. Siguro last question na lang. If there were other stories that you think should still be written after this. Kasi minsan yung thinking is, okay, nailabas na, tapos na, end. But it's not the end, obviously. So what other stories should be pursued after this?
I think there's more to it. Why was HMR so? We didn't even talk about HMR that much. Why were they so confident in selling the laptops that even after the issue came out? More, I think, into the bidding process. I think it should be looked at more closely. And overall, the impact of, this is a multi-billion peso program every single year that the DepEd sets aside. And the reason why they got the logistics providers in the first place is because this problem with computers not reaching the schools has been flagged by the COA before. So how, if we're spending billions for computers for teachers, why are we still getting complaints of low quality laptops, of laptops not reaching the schools? So I think there should be more, not just us, but more media looking into it, into the DepEd computerization program itself. Are there other anomalies? Are there other similar issues that we just missed? And moving forward, how can we make the process more transparent? How can we make it more efficient? I think we can shed more light on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, gusto ko yung sinabi ni Ryan na we hope na maraming media yung mag-look into it. Kasi it's not enough that it's just Rappler telling this story. 'Di ba? Para mas maganda sana if lahat ng media organization reporting on this issue para ma-pressure yung government to act on it. Kasi yun naman talaga yung role ng media, 'di ba? To keep them in check. So sana hindi lang Rappler. Kasi at the end of the day, parang isa lang naman yung goal natin dito para talaga maayos yung sistema. And at the same time, siguro yung another follow-up story na gusto ko sanang gawin is, ano yung impact nitong storya na to on how DepEd does their procurement? Magkakaroon ba ng pagbabago, especially now na centralized siya? So another advice nga ng isang expert na nakausap natin is i-decentralize na lang wherein yung mga regional level yung magpo-procure ng kanila para alam nila kung ano talaga yung kailangan nila. Of course, mahaba din yung proseso, pero it's another thing na pwede nilang i-consider, I guess.
Yes. And Ailla?
I guess important din po na hingin yung side ng mga teachers and schools. Kasi sila po yung pinaka-affected dito Sa kanila po dapat babagsak talaga yung mga laptop na yon, pero hindi nila natanggap. So ayun, I think it's just important to get to know their side din.
And hear their voice,
Yes.
no? Kasi
Opo.
usually yung mga apektado hindi nakakapagsalita,
Nagsasalita.
hindi naririnig.
Actually, ma'am, takot silang makipag-usap sa akin ngayon. I've been trying to get in touch with them, pero they keep on postponing our interviews kasi natatakot silang magsalita.
Sige. Maraming salamat sa inputs ninyo at pagkukwento about this investigative story. I'm sure there will be others coming from Rappler. At babantayan natin yan. Napakahalaga ng DepEd as an institution. Sabi nga ni Bonz kanina, merong learning crisis ang Pilipinas. We ranked, according to a recent World Bank report, ang ranking natin, ang percent natin is 90.1% na poverty learning. And this is one of the lowest in ASEAN. Lamang lang tayo ng kaunti sa Afghanistan. Parang nakakahiya, di ba? Parang given where we are as a developed nation, dapat mas mataas din yung learning levels ng mga estudyante. We hope that this story will be picked up by other media. We also hope that the department will be a little more transparent and will act very swiftly and do the proper investigation so that those who should be held to account will be held accountable. Yun lang naman yung habol ng mga investigative stories. Because after all, ang papel talaga ng media is check and balance. Thank you very much for watching Newsbreak Chats. And kung meron kayong tips, sabihan nyo lang kami at email investigative@rappler.com. I'm Chay Hofileña, and this is Newsbreak Chats.